While math is a subject primarily based on numbers, it is important that students are comfortable with literate practices, including reading for information and interpreting graphs, both of which are necessary for completing a word problem. I have included 2 examples of middle school math problems where literate practices are seen. The first example I will discuss poses a question in the form of a word problem and provides a graph. The problem is as follows. This graph shows how the amount of flour that Kendall has left is related to the number of cakes that she bakes. At most, how many cakes can Kendall bake if she needs to have 40 cups of flour left? The first step for the student is to read the problem for information. Highlighting important information about what the question is asking often helps. Here I have underlined what the graph is displaying and what the question is asking. The second step will be for the student to interpret the graph. In this scenario, the graph is of a linear function. Students will need to know how to read a graph by finding x and y coordinates. This problem is asking how many cakes can be baked if there needs to be 40 cups of flour left. It is necessary to be able to interpret that the student needs to find the x coordinate because the x-axis corresponds to the number of cakes. So essentially we are finding the point x, 40 because the y-coordinate corresponds to the cups of flour left, which is given. So students will need to know that a graph is read by moving left or right to the x-coordinate value and then up or down to the y-coordinate value. In this example, the student would move up to the 40 along the y-axis since the y value is given, and then over to the right where the line is. They must then follow the line to see that the answer will be 6 cakes based on the x-axis. I've included a second example of another word problem that requires being able to read and interpret a graph. The problem is as follows. Every day after school, Marion and his sister Linda play their favorite video game, Wizarding Legends. The goal of the game is to earn power points by defeating goblins. The graph shows the proportional relationship between the number of goblins defeated, x, and the number of power points earned, y. What does the point 2, 4 represent? The first step will similarly be to read for information and understand what the graph is representing. In this case, the xy coordinate is representing the number of goblins as the x value and the power points as the y value. We know this because the x-axis is labeled as goblins and the y-axis is labeled as power points. This problem is a more conceptual version of the previous because it is giving the point already. Where the goal of the last problem was to read the graph and identify a point, this problem requires students to be able to conceptually interpret what the graph is representing in this problem. Students must know what a proportional relationship means, and in this case, what the slope is representing. As goblins increases by 1, the power points increase by 2. So this information is essential for correctly interpreting the given graph. In this example, the answer is the first option, that today Marion defeats 2 goblins and earned 4 power points. Word problems are an essential part of making any math class relevant to the real world by having students apply knowledge to a situation. As we have seen from these 2 examples, many word problems involve graphs. So the next time you are faced with what seems like a daunting task, first ask yourself, what is this problem asking me to solve for? And then, what information am I able to obtain from the graphs and diagrams provided? Following these steps can make any word problem seem more reasonable.